Unlike some of the more rambunctious members of the kids next door, Abigail Lincoln, aka Number 5, was always calm, cool, and collected. In fact, sometimes she was downright indifferent, and it looks like there might have been an underlying reason for this chill-axed attitude. Sadly, all of the theories I've been able to come up with are pretty messed up. But what if they explained exactly what made Abby such a great secondary leader and such a relaxed person? According to this first theory, Abigail's sense of indifference sadly came from the idea that she would never live up to the expectations that were set for her by her elder sister and nemesis, Cree. As you know, Abigail's family consisted of her mother, Mrs. Lincoln, her father, Mr. Lincoln, her older sister, Cree, and herself. Well, when we first met Cree in Operation Support, it was quickly revealed that she used to be a member of the kids next door. She was known as Number 5 before she aged into a teenager and became a sworn enemy of the organization. Cree was shown to be quite advanced for her age in terms of her athleticism and intelligence. In fact, she was so physically adept that, according to the history of the kids next door, when Cree turned 13 and was about to be decommissioned as Number 11, she managed to escape the process and defected with all of her memories of the kids next door. Well, according to this theory, Cree's skills and intelligence would have also shown themselves in her normal life. She would have likely excelled at school and been very popular among the other people her age. Well, this is something that her parents would have likely noticed and perhaps used to pressure Number 5 into being more like her older sister. In fact, that's exactly what this theory suggests. According to the theory, Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln were constantly comparing Abigail to her older sister Cree, and that might have been an issue for two reasons. The first was that Number 5 clearly wasn't a fan of her older sister, as they were basically each other's arch nemesis. I mean, Cree even tried to steal Number 5's memories the first time that we met her in Operation Support. Luckily, Number 5 was too smart to let that happen. Regardless of Cree's success or not, she and Abby were clearly enemies, which would make the pressure from her parents to be more like her older sister even worse. The second reason that sort of pressure would be a mistake is because maybe Number 5 felt like she couldn't live up to it. If she felt like she could never meet her parents' expectations to be more like Cree, and Abby felt like she couldn't, she may have just given up. This could have been what led to her being so indifferent all of the time. She didn't really care about anything because maybe she knew that she would never reach the expectations set for her. So in her mind, it was like, why bother? You have to remember though, this is all just a theory, and there's really not enough information about Abby's parents to make it clear whether they would or wouldn't lay down those sort of expectations. Now, what if I told you that there's a very similar theory that doesn't just see Number 5 as the Lincoln child who was pushed too far? Well, according to this next theory, both Abby and Cree were constantly being pushed by their parents to do better, which inevitably led one down a villainous path and caused one to not really care about anything. This theory is quite similar to the first, but with one big difference. Instead of Cree being the example of success, it suggests that Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln used themselves as examples. As I said, not much is known about Abigail's parents, but from the episode Operation Clown, we know that Mr. Lincoln was once a clown before becoming a doctor. Meanwhile, Mrs. Lincoln's job is entirely unknown. The only thing we really know about her is that she is very intelligent, which is why most fans seem to think that she was a lawyer. On top of that, it's pretty likely that both of Number 5's parents were French immigrants, based on the fact that they both have accents. Well, it's not uncommon for parents to want a better life for their children than the one that they had. So according to this theory, Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln immigrated to the United States where they raised their family to the best of their ability. Now, as immigrants in a foreign land, they would certainly want their children to strive for excellence so that they could establish themselves and make lives of their own. Well, according to this theory, they may have just pushed too hard for Cree and Abigail to become lawyers or doctors just like they were, and inevitably pushed them down two very different paths. While Cree became very aggressive and eventually left the kids next door to join the villainous organization that they were odds with, Number 5 instead became very calm and collected as she threw herself deep into the organization and spent as much time as she could away from her family. In other words, while Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln likely meant well, the pressure they placed on their children may have been what led Abby to be so nonchalant about everything. While that would be an interesting theory, what if it wasn't Number 5's home life that made her so relaxed and indifferent, but instead it had something to do with her mind? This next theory suggests that Abigail's indifference was caused by her intelligence level being much higher than those around her. In other words, Number 5 may have been a genius all along without anybody realizing it. According to studies, a person's IQ can be an indicator as to why they act in certain ways emotionally. While throughout most of history, it was believed that intelligent people were considered to be cold or even emotionless, studies have found that it's actually the opposite. According to more recent studies, people with a high IQ tend to possess high emotional intelligence as well, which means they understand what they are feeling and, more importantly, why they are feeling that way. So, they are able to keep those emotions in check or at bay when it isn't necessary to express them. This could explain why Number 5 seems to be so indifferent all the time. As anyone who has watched Codename Kids Next Door can tell you, Abby was one of the smartest members of the Kids Next Door. Not only was she shown to be streetwise, but she also was book smart. In other words, the fact that Number 5 simply understood the world around her helped her navigate life and maintain a seamlessly carefree attitude, even when she was under pressure from one of the Kids Next Door's many villains. Not to mention, high IQ is also known to lead to modesty, and Number 5 was as modest as they came. She could see her own shortcomings as well as the strengths of those around her, which is probably why she gave up her role as the leader of Sector V when Number 1 joined the team. She was smart enough to see that he would be the better leader and she would make a better commander in the organization. While most people would probably be bummed out or upset over losing the power position, Number 5 was totally fine with giving it up because she could see the logistical purpose behind the decision. On top of that, Number 5 was also smart enough to perceive people's true intentions. For instance, in the episode Operation Support, while Number 5 was sick, Kree dressed up as a ninja and tried to suck information out of her brain while she was sleeping. However, Number 5 apparently saw this coming a mile away and actually replaced her body with a doll and watched her sister from the roof all the while and reported back to Number 1. There was no pulling a fast one on Number 5, that's for sure. So according to this theory, Number 5 was simply calm and indifferent all the time, because she always knew what was going on and therefore didn't feel the need to waste energy stressing out or getting upset. I personally really like this theory, because it's basically proven by how smart Abby was in the show, but also by how compassionate she was too. Number 5 was always shown helping others, and that level of compassion or understanding is another sign of her having a high IQ, unlike her elder sister Kree, who was willing to hurt innocent kids to get what she wanted. Now, as cool as it would be for Number 5 to be a genius, there is one last thing that could have led her to her calm and indifferent attitude. What if she literally learned it from her parents? This theory differs a bit, because instead of suggesting that Mr. and Mrs. Lincoln pushed their children too hard, it suggests that they didn't push them hard enough. As I said before, Number 5's parents likely worked very difficult jobs, with her father being a doctor and her mother possibly being a lawyer. This could mean that most of their time was spent away from their home and their family. With so little time to watch after and raise Number 5, it could be perceived that her parents simply didn't push her, and instead, by the time they got home every night, they were too tired to care about anything. Well, as she grew up, Number 5 likely would have noticed the attitude that her parents had towards life, and if they were as unenthusiastic as this theory suggests, it's no surprise that Abby turned out that same way. Think about it. If you grew up in an environment where no one was excitable or determined about anything, then you probably wouldn't feel too geared up either. Well, according to this theory, that's exactly what happened to Number 5, which is why she is so relaxed all the time. Everything is cool because nothing really matters. Now, as I mentioned, all of these are just fan theories, and at the end of the day, you can interpret Number 5's attitude however you would like to. But it's hard to deny that there's a likely reason that a child as young as Abby would be so indifferent most of the time. I'm curious to know what you think though. If you had to choose one of these theories, which do you believe best described why Number 5 was so calm and carefree? Be sure to let me know in the comments below.